Eyewitness News presents Newsmakers, winner of the Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasting Award for Excellence in Public Affairs Programming, with your hosts, Jan Bugda and Andy Mahalchik.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Bugda. Are you willing to stand to be the voice of a child? Court-appointed special advocates or CASA volunteers play a special role in the life of a child going through a difficult situation. Today, we'll learn more about the CASA program, how you can become a volunteer, and their future goals. I'll introduce you to my guests, and our discussion will begin when this edition of Newsmakers begins right after this. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Bugda. Today we're talking about CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates. And my guests today are John Osakevich, who is the Executive Director of CASA of Luzerne County, and Annie Ellis, who is a CASA Advocate Coordinator for Luzerne County. And we're talking a little bit about the program. We're going to try to generate some interest for them to get some volunteers. But I think what we'll start with, John and Annie, is to talk a little bit about what is CASA and what they do for children in our community.
First, it's great to be here. Thank you, Jane Ann. It's important to note how a child enters the child welfare system. No child wants to be removed from their home. They enter the child welfare system because the parents that have been entrusted with their care and their love simply have been unable to do so. So, for example, in Luzerne County tonight, 447 children will put their head on a pillow, will sleep in a bed, be under a roof in which that house is not their home. They've been removed because of abuse or neglect. So the need in our community is substantial, but the model for CASA is so unique and so special that we want to share with you that program that has come to Luzerne County in the last 5 years, but began in Seattle, Washington about 40 years ago.
So tell us a little bit about what a CASA volunteer or CASA advocate does.
So there's really two primary functions that we like to think of with regard to the CASA volunteer. They are empowered by a judge's order to have access to all information concerning the child that's been removed from his or her home because of abuse and neglect. So there's really two roles that we see the CASA volunteer having. First is because the CASA volunteer is only appointed to one case and one child or one sibling group, they have the opportunity to invest time into that child that no other participant in the system can. So they're going to develop a very close relationship with that child by having visits with that child at least twice per month, developing a bond with that child, a rapport with that child, and then secondly, they're going to be empowered by that court order to have access to all information concerning that child, whether it's behavioral, therapeutic, medical, educational, so that each time this case is reviewed by the judge, which is every 6 months, they will stand in court and they will testify as to a recommendation to the judge for that child's safety and best interest, be it placement and or services. And so that's what I think is both the strength and the challenge of the program, is because you only have one case, one child or one sibling group, but the responsibility is enormous, but the impact can be so great.
Now currently, how many volunteers do you have in your ranks right now?
We're really proud to announce that we completed our fall training class and had 12 new volunteer advocates trained and sworn in. So with that class, we now have 44 active advocates. And to think that 2 years ago, in January of 2017, we had 18 active advocates, and we'll begin January of 2019 with 44, demonstrates the growth that we're experiencing. But again, there are 447 children in Luzerne County in placement because of abuse and neglect. So while we're excited about where we're currently at, the need to grow and expand is so important.
Now you were here in the very beginning, and when we first started talking about CASA coming to our area, and we've seen it grown, but we've also seen the need grown. And Annie, you've been a CASA volunteer, and now you're an advocate for the group. And tell us a little bit about what you were looking for in a volunteer, because I know someone out there may be sitting saying, may not be what I may not be qualified to be a volunteer. Who are your volunteers?
They're you and I. They're everybody that you come across. I like to think of it as there's just a few important qualities. I call them the C's, right? Commitment, compassion, concern, common sense. We bring to this experience, and it's a very unique volunteer experience. This is a hands-on, really involving yourself in a child's life to make a difference. The courts have asked us to go into that child's life and to bring back to them something that they couldn't otherwise know, because not everybody can go into the living rooms and go into the schools and go into the doctor's office. So if you have, I think, primarily an interest in helping children, in making a difference in a child's life, in understanding that you can give of yourself in a way that a child has really never had before. The children that we advocate for, by and large, really have not had a trusted adult consistently present in their lives, especially to navigate this difficult child welfare system.
Let's talk a little bit about the time commitment. If someone says, I want to be a volunteer, what is the time commitment?
Well, to begin with training, and
Right.
our training is based upon a national CASA curriculum, and it'll be involved with such topics as the foster care system, the legal system, abuse and neglect, poverty, trauma, substance abuse, etc. So it's a 30-hour program that we do over the course of 8 weeks. There's also courtroom observation that's part of the training. So once a volunteer has been trained, they're now sworn in and prepared to take a case. On average, we expect 10 to 12 hours per month, because that'll require at least 2 visits per month with a child. Then you're also spending time, as I mentioned before, having access to all the records pertaining to that child and reviewing them and being in communication with the service providers, being in communication with the caseworker and the attorney for the child. And as I said lastly, to appear in court and testify and also write a report for the judge at least twice per year. The challenge also is, quite frankly, that the cases last on average 1.5 years. So the most important thing, and to follow up with what Annie said, is the commitment. Once a CASA has been appointed to a case, we so strongly feel the importance and the need to remain the advocate for that child for the duration of the period in which that case is being opened by the court, which can be 1.5 to 2 years. Because we don't want to be the adult in the child's life who changes, who steps aside, because that's happened way too often for that child.
I think if you go on your website, which I'm going to link up to our website at pahomepage.com, you have an excellent video on there that explains the role of the volunteer, and I think it gives people in essence to see what it's like to be volunteers, because you hear from the volunteers who say how it not only changes a child's life, but it changes the volunteers' lives as well. So it's a very rewarding experience. Tell us a little bit, Annie, how you got involved and a little bit about your experience.
So about 3 years ago, I was pretty much like everybody else and had no idea that this organization existed. More importantly, I had no idea about the need for this kind of an organization. And I myself had saw a public service announcement detailing CASA, and I really did think that's an idea whose time has come. And it was very compelling to me, so much so that I went through the process. I applied and I was accepted. I underwent the training. Part of the training, at the conclusion of the training generally, is court observation, and that's spending time in the dependency court in front of the judge, observing what goes on. And when I was observing at the end of my training, I was with my supervisor, and the judge at that time for that particular court hearing that we were overseeing asked that a CASA be appointed right there from the bench, that this child was really in need of an advocate. And so my supervisor looked at me and said, would you be willing to take this on? And I, of course, said yes. So I really kind of jumped into it. When you complete your training, you are actually sworn in by the court. You take an oath of office. So I was sworn in and appointed to that case. You're appointed to that dependency case for that child. And what we do is to make considered recommendations to the court about what we believe is in the child's best interest, but how we do that is the most important thing. And how we do that is to spend time with the child, to get to know the child. The order to appoint allows us great access into every area of that child's life: school, doctors, therapists, IEP meetings, anything that the child is going through, that you can step in help that child. You know, we kind of want to move that child's case forward. So the single most important thing that we do is to become a trusted adult in that child's life. And when I meet a child for the first time, what I usually say, I explain that I'm a volunteer advocate, and that means I'm here because I want to be, not because I get paid, not because it's my job. An advocate means that I'm here for you. And after a while, the child learns to understand and trust and expect that relationship to grow.
And you recently had a class that took the oath, and they're now beginning their journey as volunteers. Tell us a little bit about those volunteers. What are their backgrounds? Where do they come from?
Well, one of the commonalities of this class, I think each of them has at least a bachelor's degree, if not more than a bachelor's degree. So it's a very astute group, and I believe half are employed, if not full-time, at least part-time. A very diverse group from educators, occupational therapists, social workers. One is a retired oral surgeon. Very diverse group. And we also have, out of the 12, 3 males. And up until that point, we only had 2 male CASA volunteers. So it's really important because to have male volunteers, about half of our children that we serve are boys. And we've really seen the need, especially with adolescents, to have a strong male role model that they can turn to. So we really think this is a unique and special group of volunteers, and already we've assigned 3 cases to the 12. So they'll begin their work shortly.
But of course the program is open to anyone who has an interest in becoming involved.
Oh my gosh, yes. As Annie said, the most important thing is that notion of commitment and consistency and compassion.
And you have a goal that you want to reach. And this is an interesting goal, because you want to reach 90 volunteers by 2020. So tell us about this goal.
So we began this goal at the beginning of 2018 because we do 2 training classes each year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And as I said, in 2017, we felt the need that we can really grow because there is such a need for more volunteers. So we thought, this is a doable goal. There will be 6 classes over the next 3 years. So the goal is to train 15 new volunteers each class, so that at the end of those 6 classes in 3 years, we'll have 90 new volunteers and we'll be able to serve more than 100 children. So it's an ambitious, but we think a doable goal. This year, we trained 26 new volunteers. So we felt we came close to our goal. We're hopeful to meet or perhaps exceed that in the next 2 years.
And when you talk about CASA volunteers and you talk about the time commitment, and some people may say, what happens after you've been with the child and they've gone through the system? You continue a relationship with the children?
So that's a really interesting question. And the first case, the child that I advocated for, was a young boy who was severely physically abused in his own home. He was taken out of his home. He arrived in school one day so badly beaten that his teacher called 911. He was taken out of his home. His abuser went to jail, and he was placed in foster care. And it took a period of time. I mean, really, you know, the first few times I went to see him, he couldn't make eye contact. You know, this is another stranger coming into your house. He didn't really know if he could trust me. But after a year, at least, you know, maybe, I was attending cross-country meets, going to his karate practice to watch him, taking him out places. We really had a trust relationship. The wonderful news for me and the big impact and what we hope for these kids, of course the goal is always permanency, that they either get reunified with their family of origin or they move through the foster care system into a permanent placement. So I'm happy to tell you that in April of this year he was adopted by his very loving foster family, and he's doing great. I have seen him, I've explained to him, you don't need me anymore, and that's a really good thing, but I'll always be here and you'll always know where I am. He'll be getting a Christmas package in the next few days. Yeah. So it is a long-lasting relationship. If the child's open to that, that's a really great thing. And when I say that I have gotten way more than I have given, I mean that.
I think there's a great follow-up to that story, though, about this particular child, because Annie went to see him. His birthday was, I think, after the adoption.
Yep.
And he shared something with you, though, about how he just seemed to be, as you observed, lighter, more at ease, and maybe you want to follow that up a little bit with that.
So the conversation that we had was about a month after he was adopted, and I spent the entire day with him, and we had a great day. And he was different, and I said, you seem different. What is it? And he said, for those 4 years, I was afraid that somebody would come into the house again in the middle of the night and take me out of it.
Oh.
And I don't have to live that way anymore. I don't feel that way anymore.
So his life has been changed.
His life has changed.
What happens to children who are not appointed an advocate or a CASA volunteer?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure we can answer it, but one of the things that we often talk about within our staff is a case with a CASA and a case without a CASA. And perhaps one of the illustrations I can make it, because it just happened in court this past week with our CASA volunteer. It was a very difficult case because of abuse, and of course they're all difficult, right? But she was very adamant in her advocacy that this particular child was in need of trauma therapy. And she was the only one that was advocating for that. And thankfully the judge went along with that recommendation. So in this particular case, her advocacy for this child to engage in trauma therapy was heard by the court. She served as the voice for the child. So I think in answer to your question, my expectation is that we bring to the court's attention perhaps the need that children may have for services, perhaps, whether it's a continuation of or improvement in or new services. So I think one of the differences that we make is by providing information to the judge that she may not otherwise have about this child, so that she can make better informed decisions about what will serve that child's best interests more effectively.
Now, how does the court system, or judges, or other attorneys and caseworkers, how do they welcome a CASA volunteer? Are they welcomed in our system?
I believe so, because we do collaborate. We operate under a memorandum of understanding with the court and with children and youth, but we also have to interface with and collaborate with the attorney appointed for the child, because their role is also to advocate for the best interest. The challenge, however, is the caseload for the guardian ad litem's probably 80 to 100 children as part of their caseload. They simply don't have the time. So what we try to do is ensure that they get the information that they need to also inform the court what's happening in this child's life. So we'd like to work closely with the guardian ad litem's as well as with the agency, because caseworkers have a caseload of 15 to 20 cases. They also, through no fault of their own, do not have the time to spend on one case with one child as the CASA volunteer.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the CASA program. You're watching Newsmakers. You can find information on today's show, and we hope we are inspiring you to get involved in the CASA program on pahomepage.com or under the Newsmakers link. You're watching Newsmakers, and we're a proud recipient of 3 Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasting Awards for Excellence in Public Affairs Programming. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugden. Today I'm joined by Jan Osakevich, who is the Executive Director of CASA of Luzerne County, and Annie Ellis, who's a CASA Advocate Coordinator. And we're talking about the need for volunteers. They're trying to garner 90 volunteers by the year 2020, and we're talking about inspiring you at home to get involved in the program, and we hope we're doing so. And we were talking about, as we headed to break, about the collaboration you have with the different agencies in the area as a CASA volunteers. And tell us a little bit, continue on about how you get involved with the different agencies. And
first of all, the referrals that we receive, the majority of them come through Luzerne County Children and Youth Services. So we work closely with them in identifying the need for the CASA volunteer and then matching one of our advocates to the case that'll be the best fit for that particular case. So there's obviously close communication and contact with the agency regarding that. We also receive referrals from the judge. But once the CASA volunteer is involved in the case, they're going to be engaged in contact with the kinship foster care folks, the agencies that run that program, like Loftus Vagari. We're involved with the Family Service Association, with Domestic Violence Service Center, Wyoming Valley Drug and Alcohol Services. It's a collaborative effort, all again with the intent of trying to determine and inform the judge what will serve this child's best interests.
That must be such a difficult decision to make, to decide which child has a person to go with them. I can't even imagine how you would even begin to decide.
That is one of the most challenging and heartbreaking aspects of what we do, because the more we're in it, the more we see the need. And the challenge is to stay positive. We do get probably some of the most complex cases because there are not enough for every child in Luzerne County to have an advocate. We find that some of the most complex and challenging cases and the most difficult stories to hear are the ones that the courts and or the agency decides that a CASA would be most beneficial for. And you know, we rise to that challenge, and we take that challenge very seriously. I have been a volunteer advocate for about 2.5, almost 3 years. I joined the staff as an advocate coordinator in June of this year, and my take now, based on that experiences as an advocate for 2 children, I knew 2 very difficult and troubling stories. As an advocate coordinator, I now know about 50 of those very difficult stories. What keeps me awake at night are the 400 I haven't heard yet.
Right, and that's where the need is for the people to step forward and say, I want to take this challenge and become a volunteer. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, as we're mentioning the volunteers, you have a new recruiting coming up. So your next recruiting is coming up in?
Well, the spring training class will begin March 27th, so this is a perfect time for people to become engaged with our program. We have an information session monthly where they can learn more about the program. Applications will begin after the new year, and they can begin to apply and hopefully participate in that March 27th training.
Now we'll have this information on pahomepage.com, and I'm sure if anybody's interested, they can give you a call as well. Now I want to remind people that there are other CASA programs throughout our area. We're talking about Luzerne County, but there are several other programs throughout the area, and we have that information also on our website. And if you're looking to get involved in a program maybe in your area, we have that information there as well. Do you work with other programs around our area to see what they're doing or how they operate? Do you all work together?
There's a Pennsylvania CASA organization which has a terrific executive director, Jen DeBalco. So at least twice a year, the executive directors for each of the programs meet and share ideas and collaborate and discuss things that will be beneficial to all the programs. There is a CASA program in Lackawanna County, as well as in Snyder, Union, Northumberland, and Lycoming County.
So our area is pretty much covered with volunteer efforts for people who are interested. Let's talk a little bit about how you were funded.
Sure. So we are a nonprofit 501c3. Currently we don't receive any tax dollars to support our program. We rely on 3 primary funding streams. We have 2 fundraising events each year. We can hopefully talk about one shortly in the spring that's coming up. We just finished a very successful evening in Casablanca event in September that raised over $100,000 and was attended by over 300 people. A tremendously successful event. And we also receive grant money through various foundations that we make application to, and we've been generously supported by such foundations as All One Charities and NEPA Healthcare Foundation, Moses Taylor Foundation, Maslow Family Foundation, Taylor Family Foundation. Great support, and we also rely upon individual and corporate contributions.
And private donations.
Yes.
Right? So tell us about you have an event called NEPA Sing. So tell us a little bit about that for people who aren't familiar. You launched it last year.
It was just such a fun event. Last year was the first time we tried this, and it was sort of modeled after the television program The Voice, but we brought it on a local level. So the idea was, you know, one of the CASA mantras is lift up a child's voice, a child's life. So we had the idea of let's put this out for auditions, and we had 40 very talented people audition last February, and from those 40, the judges identified 12 that they thought were the best, and then the competition itself took place in April. So we're going to do that once again at the Kirby Center for the Creative Arts on the campus of the Wyoming Seminary Upper School, a terrific venue.
So we have the information on there. We also have this on pahomepage.com. beginning in February, the auditions, and with the main event in April.
Right, they'll be able to go out and go to our website and register for the auditions.
So that's something exciting to look forward to. We have about a minute and a half left, and I just want you to once again express the need that you have, and maybe talk to someone out there who may be sitting on the fence and saying, I want to do this, but yet I'm not sure. What would you say to them?
Don't sit on the fence. I was where you are. I recruit constantly at the grocery store, when I'm out for a run. I want people to understand exactly what this is and what the need is. I'm a mom. I have 4 children. They're grown. I work full time. I now work for CASA, but I didn't before. This is infinitely doable. Your schedule will be flexible. We do ask you to make a commitment, but I know that there are people out there that were feeling like I was and do. There's more that I can do. And I think volunteerism is so simple in that regard. You know, there's a need and there's a gift. And if you just bring those two together, I think great things happen.
And John, we hope we inspired some people today. I know that John and Annie will definitely come and talk to your group if you are interested. For more information on the CASA program, go to pahomepage.com or under the Newsmakers link. I want to thank you so much, John and Annie, for joining me today.
Thank you, Jane.
And hopefully we inspired you. I'm Jane Ann Bugda. For everyone behind the scenes, thank you so much for making Newsmakers part of your day, and we'll talk again next time.